The wood was screaming before I even turned off my truck, and that was how I knew I should have driven away. It was not a normal sound, not creaking, not wind. It was a low, deep groan from white oak pushed past its limit, the kind of sound most people never notice. But I work with timber. I hear it in my teeth. It is the sound a building makes right before it gives up. I killed the engine, and the forest rushed back in. Wet air. Quiet. A storm building somewhere behind the hills. The groan sat under it all like a warning. The barn stood ahead of me, or what used to be a barn. Half of it looked new, half of it looked like it was trying to fall over. The ridge sagged to the left. Posts leaned. The whole frame looked like someone with a nail gun, and no shame had tried to fix it. I was not here to save it. I was here to say no. I grabbed my coffee from the cup holder. Black. Lukewarm. The only thing that kept me from turning the truck around. Mud sucked at my boots when I stepped out. A crooked fence line ran along the drive. Some posts new, some leaning like tired men. A stack of rough lumber sat by the gate under torn plastic, already warping in the weather. Whoever ordered that wood had already made their first mistake. A small terrier mix trotted out, barked once, then stopped. He looked at me, decided I was not worth the effort, and walked off. I liked him right away. The barn doors slid open. She walked out like she owned every inch of the place. Denim overalls over a white tank top. A faded blue cap pulled low. Ponytail through the back. Grease rag tucked into her front pocket. Dirt on her cheekbone. She did not bother to wipe it off. She was not the city flipper I expected. She looked solid. Grounded. The kind of woman who lifted her own weight and did not ask for help until she had to. "You the timber guy?" she asked. "I'm Jude," I said, leaning against the truck, crossing my arms. "And that ridge beam is going to snap inside of 48 hours. She turned and looked up at the sagging line of the roof. No panic, no fake laugh. Just a breath that came out heavy. 48 hours, she said. "Great. The bank inspection is in 72. "Then you are going to fail," I said. It came out flat. I was not trying to be mean. Gravity does not care what you need. Rot does not either. You need a miracle, not a carpenter. "I do not believe in miracles," she said. Her eyes met mine. Dark, calm, sharp. "I believe in paying for good work. Marco said you were the best. Expensive, grumpy, impossible to book, but the best." I cursed Marco in my head. Out loud I said, "Marco exaggerates." "Look," she said, stepping closer. I caught the scent of lavender and sawdust on her skin. It hit harder than I liked. "I do not need you to be nice. I need you to keep that roof from killing me while I try to save my family's place. Can you fix it, or did I waste my time waiting for you?" The smart move was to get back in the truck and drive back down the hill. Say no. Take an easier job with straighter lines and less risk. The wind picked up. The barn groaned again. The sound rolled through me like a threat. "I can fix it," I said, grabbing my tool belt from the back of the truck. "But it is going to cost you, and you stay out of my way." She smiled, just a small lift of one corner of her mouth, but it landed like a direct hit. "Deal," she said. A diesel engine rumbled up the drive before I could take 3 steps. A flatbed truck came over the rise, tires throwing gravel. The door swung open and Marco climbed down. Ball cap, flannel, worn work boots, grin like he'd already heard the joke. "Tell me I'm not late," he yelled. "You are," I called back. "By about 3 minutes. Marco grinned wider, then looked at the barn and let out a low whistle. "Jude," he said, standing next to me. Still fixing other people's bad decisions. He turned to the woman. "This her?" She stepped forward and held out her hand. "Carmen," she said. "I'm the one who called you a legend." Marco shook her hand. His grip was firm, respectful. "I told you," he said, nodding at me. "Expensive, grumpy, but he makes wood behave." "You talk too much," I muttered. Marco laughed and walked back to the flatbed. "I brought the LVLs, steel plates, and chain falls you asked for. Also brought a second pair of hands since you're not 20 anymore." "I did not ask for your mouth," I said. "You got it anyway," he shot back. He nodded at the lumber stack by the gate. "Cover that. Sun and rain will twist it. Jude hates twisted." "I have a tarp," Carmen said, holding up the one I had thrown earlier. Marco's eyebrows lifted just a little. He had seen what I saw. She listened. She moved. She did not argue just to feel strong. We unloaded the hardware together. Steel plates clanged. Chains rattled. The wet air filled with the smell of metal and cut pine. When we finished, Marco came close and spoke low so only I could hear. "Try not to fall for her," he said. "You'll hate it." I did not answer him. He winked at Carmen, climbed back in his truck and drove off, leaving tire tracks in the mud and his words in my head. Before I went inside, I pointed at the boards by the fence. "Why are those still out here?" I asked. "The supplier dropped them yesterday," she said. "I was going to move them after I finished those posts." The wind ripped the wrap. "I know they'll warp." "You are going to lose half that stack," I said. "I know," she said, jaw tight. I dug a ratchet strap and tarp from my truck and tossed them to her. "Cover them. Strap them tight," I said. "If you want to fight a bank, do not lose a fight to weather." For a second, she looked at me like I had handed her something more important than plastic and a strap. "Yes, sir," she said. Her smile turned the words into a dare. I did not smile back. I did, however, walk over and shoulder two of the longest boards myself. Rough pine bit into my shirt. They were heavy. I carried them like they were not. Not to impress her. To save good wood from going bad. Her eyes followed me all the way to the barn door. I felt the weight of that gaze between my shoulder blades. Inside was worse. The last guy had used cheap nails and green oak. The acid in the wood was eating them alive. Bolts stuck out in random places, splitting the grain without adding real strength. Some braces were just decorative. The skeleton was wrong. I spent the first hour pacing, measuring, and cursing under my breath. Carmen did not hover. She stayed on the far side of the barn with a belt sander in her hands, grinding old boards smooth. The machine was loud and heavy. She handled it like she had done it for years. Most people with money pointed at photos on their phones and said, like this. Carmen actually worked. By noon, I had a plan that would not end with us crushed under oak. Step 1. Stop the ridge from moving anymore. I set up temporary posts and a hydraulic jack with a gauge so I could lift slow. I snapped chalk lines across the beam and marked reference points with a carpenter's pencil. I do not trust eyeballs when I am inside a building that wants to collapse. Carmen watched from a distance, arms folded, eyes sharp. "You always do that?" she called out. "Do what?" I asked. "Mark everything, like you are mapping a crime scene." "It is a crime scene," I said. "Someone murdered this frame." Her mouth twitched. "So you are the detective?" "I am the cleanup," I said. I started to pump the jack. The barn answered with a long, low groan. I stopped and listened. No sharp crack, no rush of new movement. Good. I lifted the ridge, 2 inches over 20 minutes, slow enough for the fibers to adjust. Then I set the weight onto the temporary posts. The screaming in the woods stopped. The silence that followed felt almost private, like the barn and I had just shared a secret. Across the room, Carmen let out a breath she had been holding for a long time. "Okay," she said quietly. That was impressive. "That was step 1, I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Out of a lot." She did not complain. She just nodded and went back to work. Lunch showed up when I did not ask for it. "Lunch," she said, stepping into my space and holding out a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. "Roast beef, horseradish. I brought food. Eat mine. It is better." I took a bite. She was right. It annoyed me. She sat on a stack of pallets, the little dog curled at her boots, chewing her own sandwich. The barn smelled like dust, coffee, and a future that did not exist yet. "So," she said, eyes on me, "why are you so angry at the world, Jude?" "I am not angry," I said. "I am efficient." "You frown when you measure," she said. "You frown when you cut. You frown when you drink coffee. You act like you are 80. I have seen enough bad work to age a man, I muttered. People want things fast and cheap. Wood does not work that way. It takes time. It takes respect. I agree, she said. Her gaze went up to the rafters. For a second, her face softened, unguarded. My dad built this place. He was not a master like you. He just used what he had. But he loved it. I am trying to turn it into a wedding barn. Something real. Not one of those fake ones out by the highway. It has good bones, I said, even though I had sworn I would not give her hope. Just abused bones. Like most of us, she said quietly. I took another bite of the sandwich so I would not have to answer that. I told myself I was only here for the wood. For the frame. For the challenge. But when she tried to haul a bag of cement bigger than she was, and I walked over and took it from her without a word, and she said thank you in that low voice that sounded like a promise, I knew I was lying to myself. The next morning I pulled up just after sunrise. Mist hung over the field. The barn looked less like a corpse and more like a patient in surgery. I expected to find Carmen inside. Instead, I saw her by the fence line, cap on, hammer in hand, boots planted. She was setting posts, driving nails like each hit was personal. You are setting fence posts now? I called. She did not stop swinging. If this place opens, she said, people will park out here. If the fence fails, someone gets hurt. If someone gets hurt, they sue. If they sue, the bank wins. She said it like a simple math problem, painfully accurate. I walked closer and looked at the line of posts, then at the gravel drive, then at the corner. You are measuring from the wrong corner, I said. Her shoulders tensed. I am using the old line. The old line is wrong, I said. It has been drifting for 20 years. If you build off that, your gate will bind, your panels will not line up, and you will fight this fence for the rest of your life. She stared at me, hammer frozen in midair. Are you going to tell me the right way? She asked, slow and tight, or just judge me? I pulled my tape measure from my belt, hooked it on the corner post, and snapped out a string line. Watch, I said. I paced out the distance, marked it, checked for square with a simple 3-4-5 triangle. Muscle memory. I set her level on the new mark. The bubble slid dead center. That is square, I said. Do it like that and you won't hate yourself later. For a moment, the hard set of her jaw loosened. Something in her expression softened. Okay, she said. No big praise, no big speech. She just stepped up to the line, eyes on the string, then on my hands. She nodded once, like a soldier learning a better drill. My lungs forgot how to work for half a second. I turned away before my own body could betray me and grabbed another stake. 3 days later, the shiny trouble showed up. I was high on the scaffold, cutting a perfect mortise for a new brace. Each slice of the chisel had to be right. Too loose and the wood would creak. Too tight and it would split. I was in that quiet zone where all I heard was steel on wood. Miss Brown. A loud voice boomed from the doorway. I looked down. A man in a cheap suit and expensive shoes stood there, holding a clipboard like a weapon. Warren Martin. Town inspector. I knew him. He was the type who liked power more than safety. Carmen walked over, wiping her hands on a rag. She was smaller than him, but she stood straight. Warren, she said. We're busy. I see that, he said, looking up at the framing. I also see you are doing structural work. I do not recall seeing an updated engineer stamp for this load path. We are restoring to original condition, I called down. Code allows maintenance without a new stamp if the footprint has not changed. Warren squinted up at me. Jude Taylor, he said. I might have guessed. Still working without a harness? Quote, I am on a full platform, I said. Read the rules again. He turned his back on me and faced Carmen. Look, I am trying to help you, darling, he said in a fake friendly voice. This place is a money pit. My offer for the land still stands. You sell, you clear your father's debt, you walk away free. Why fight it? Quote. Carmen's chin lifted. Get off my property, she said. I can red tag this site right now, he said, pulling a red sticker from his folder. Shut you down for 30 days. You know what that means for your bank deadline? The air in the barn went tight. I saw Carmen's fingers curl around her rag. 30 days would kill her financing. I did not think. I climbed down and stepped between them. Not puffed up, not yelling. I just put my body where it needed to be. The work is to code, I said, voice low and even. I am documenting every cut, taking photos of every joint. If you red tag this without real cause, I will file a complaint with the state board and push for an ethics hearing that will follow you to retirement. He blinked. Men like him are used to fear, not facts. He looked at me, then at Carmen. Carmen did not hide. She moved closer to my shoulder, not behind me. He is right, she said. If you have a problem, put it in writing. Warren leaned in, like he wanted to crowd me. Carmen moved before I did. She stepped between us, palm lifted toward his chest, stopping him without touching. He is right, she repeated. If you have a problem, put it in writing. His jaw jumped. Fine, he snapped. I will be back for framing inspection. If one nail is wrong, I shut you down. He stomped out to his car. The terrier peed on his tire. It was the only thing that made me smile. When the sedan pulled away, Carmen did not sag. She laughed once, a short, disbelieving sound. You threatened him with paperwork, she said. He is a bully. I shrugged. Bullies hate paper. She reached up and wiped a smear of oil off my cheek with her thumb. Quick, casual, like she had done it 100 times. Micro joy, she said. I caught her wrist gently and looked at her. Do not start making me sentimental, I said. Her eyes brightened. No promises, she said. Then her voice dropped. He was right about one thing. The bank deadline is in 3 weeks. If we do not have the occupancy permit by then, they foreclose. 3 weeks? I frowned. You told me 4. I lied, she said, looking down at her boots. I did not think you would take the job if you knew how tight it was. I should have gotten angry. Impossible deadlines cause mistakes. Mistakes get people hurt. But she was standing in the skeleton of her father's barn with dirt on her face and stubborn hope in her eyes. I could not walk. Then we work weekends, I said. Her head snapped up. You do not work weekends, she said. I do now, I said. The next 2 weeks turned into a blur. Sawdust, rain, coffee. Every day I pulled up at dawn. Every day she already had a mug waiting on the work table. Black, hot, exactly how I drink it. I had never told her. She just noticed. I added things she did not ask for. A hidden steel strap over a checked beam. A sister joist, where 1,000 people would dance someday. A real header over the sliding doors so they would not sag after the first winter. Carmen noticed those too. She did not gush. She just watched in silence, like she was learning the shape of my care. One afternoon, a delivery truck rolled up with roof flashing. The driver dropped a bundle near the barn door and left. Carmen ripped the wrap and pulled up a piece. The metal bent in her hands like a soda can. Her face went pale. They told me this was the right gauge, she said. I took it from her and flexed it. Too thin, wrong metal. This will tear in the first good storm, I said. We are not using it. We cannot afford to reorder, she whispered. I looked at the flashing, then at the sky, then at her. I pulled out my phone and called the supplier. My tone stayed calm. Your invoice says 26 gauge steel, I said. This is 30. I am sending you photos with measurements. If you do not replace this by tomorrow, I file a chargeback and a report with the board. That is not a threat. That is the process. Silence, then quick apologies, then a promise of a correct order by morning. When I hung up, Carmen was staring at me. You are terrifying, she said. I am accurate, I said. Her smile turned soft. That is worse, she said. The night we set the new ridge beam, the storm finally came. Rain slammed the roof. Wind pushed at the walls hard enough to make the siding flex. The lights swung on their cords. The beam was a 20-foot length of old oak, heavy and stubborn. We rigged it with 2 chain falls and all the patience we had. Steady on the chain, I shouted over the weather, watching the links tighten. Carmen was on the other chain. Her arm shook as she pulled, her jaw clenched. She did not quit. "I have it," she gritted out. A gust hit the side of the barn. The beam swayed in its sling. I did not think. I stepped in and braced my shoulder under the oak, taking some of the weight and pushing it back into line. My boots dug into the floor. "Carmen," I said, low and sharp, "look at me." She looked. Wind howled. Rain hammered the tin. "On my count," I said. 3 pulls, then stop. We are not wrestling oak. We are guiding it. Okay? Her mouth curled even then. "Yes, sir," she said. 3, I called. She pulled. 2, the beam rose. 1. The tenon slid toward the pocket. With a solid, deep sound, the joint seated. The beam dropped home. I drove the oak peg in with my mallet. The frame shuddered once, then settled. "Done," I breathed. Carmen leaned against a post, chest heaving, sweat shining along the line of her throat. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she whispered, "just tired." Work lights painted her in warm yellow. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, it smelled like fresh-cut wood and rain. "You are doing good work, Carmen," I said. It was the first time I ever told her that straight. She looked up at me, her lips parted like she could not process the compliment. Then, in the same clear tone she used with inspectors and bankers, she asked, "You seem like a good man, Jude. You married?" The question hit me square in the chest. I looked at her. Really looked. At the way she never asked me to save her, just to stand beside her. At the way she noticed coffee and string lines and hidden steel. "No," I said. My voice came out rougher than I wanted. "I am still waiting for her." She blinked. "Waiting for who?" she asked. "For the one who does not make me feel tired," I said. The air shifted. The storm outside faded for a second under the sound of my own heart. She took a half step closer. My hand flexed at my side. I kept it in my pocket. She was my client. She was hanging on by a thread. She did not need me making anything more complicated. "We should call it a night," I said, forcing myself to turn toward my tools. "We have an early start." I heard her breathe out slow. "Yeah," she said softly. "See you tomorrow, Jude." I drove home with rain pounding my windshield and one clear thought in my head. I had just told the truth out loud for the first time in years. And I had no idea what it was going to cost me. The midpoint hit 2 days later, and it hit hard. I pulled up early, thinking about trim and a clean punch list. When I walked into the barn, Carmen was standing in the middle of the floor. She was not working. She was holding a piece of paper in both hands like it was made of glass. Her face was blank in a way I did not like. "What is it?" I asked. She did not speak. She just handed me the letter. Cease and desist. County order. Environmental hazard. Soil contamination. All work must stop immediately. No construction until testing is complete. Estimated delay, 6 to 8 weeks. Warren's name was stamped at the bottom. I felt my jaw tighten. "He says the old tractor shed leaked oil into the ground," she said, voice flat. "Testing takes weeks. The bank deadline is Friday." "It is a lie," I said. "I checked the soil when we dug footings. It is clean." "It does not matter," she whispered. "The stop work order is effective now. If we pick up a hammer, they fine us or arrest us. The bank will call the loan. I lose everything." Her knees went out from under her. She sank to the floor and pulled her legs in close. She did not sob. She just folded in on herself like someone had cut the main beam in her chest. I looked at the letter. I looked at the barn. Then I looked at her. "Get up," I said. "No," she muttered. "There is no point." "Carmen," I said, stepping closer. "Get up." I reached down and took her hand. Her palm was rough and warm. I pulled until she stood again. I did not let go. "We are not building today," I said. "We are going to the county." "It is closed," she said. "The records office is useless. They will tell us to file a complaint and wait." "Then we go to the supervisor," I said. "You bring the deed. I bring something else." "What?" she asked. "I remember reading something," I said. "This barn is on the historical list as an agricultural site. Environmental holds on protected structures need state sign-off. Warren does not have that power." Her eyes lifted, a small flicker of hope cutting through the shock. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I read code books for fun," I said. "Come on." We drove into town in my truck. She sat in the passenger seat, fingers clenched around the folder with her papers. The terrier stayed behind, guarding the barn like it understood. At the clerk's window, the woman behind the glass barely looked up. "We need the historical registry file for parcel 118B, I said. "We cannot find that right now," she said, tapping her keyboard like it hurt. "You can submit a request. Someone will contact you." I pulled my phone out of my pocket and opened a scan I had taken weeks ago when I first checked Carmen's land. "Here," I said, sliding the phone under the glass. "Registry entry from your own database." Parcel number highlighted. "Here is the state rule that says environmental holds need state review on these sites. Here is your county policy that says you must produce records on request." The clerk's mouth went tight. "Sir, I am very busy." "If you deny her access to her own file," I said, voice low, "I will file a public records request and include your name and your supervisor's name. That complaint will sit on someone's desk for a year. Or you can print the record now and save yourself the trouble." Carmen stepped forward and set the deed on the counter. "Print it," she said. Her voice was steady again. "Please." Quote. The clerk hesitated. The printer behind her started up. Papers slid out. The original registry listing. The code notes. The protections Warren had hoped she would never see. By late afternoon, we were in the county supervisor's office. He was a tired man with gray hair and a tie that had seen better days. He read the letter, read the registry, read the rule I pointed to. "Warren should not have issued this," he said finally, "not without state sign-off." "So, remove it," Carmen said. He sighed. "You understand this will make my life harder." "Mine, too," she said. "But this is my home." He stared at her for a long second, then picked up his pen and signed the override. The stamp hit the paper with a heavy thump. In the parking lot, Carmen held the signed waiver up like it might blow away. "We did it," she breathed. "We actually did it." She looked at me. Her eyes shone, but she did not cry. She smiled, wide and real. "You saved me," she said. "No," I said. "You stood your ground." "I just read the book." She laughed, bright and short. Then she looked up. Dark clouds were rolling in over the trees like bruises. "We have 1 day left now," she said. "Roof flashing. Final details, Inspector. And that looks like a storm." I followed her gaze. The sky looked bad, the kind of bad that rips roofs off barns. My gut twisted. "Then we work until the light dies," I said. The storm hit that night like it wanted to wipe the hill clean. I was at home. Wind beat against my windows. Rain fell so hard it sounded like gravel. The lights flickered once, then again. My mind went straight to the barn. We had flashing ready, but not all of it nailed down. One bad gust, under a loose edge, and the wind could peel the roof back. All it needed was a weakness. I grabbed my keys and drove. Tree branches whipped the sides of my truck. Water pooled in the low spots on the road. When I climbed the last stretch of gravel to the barn, Carmen's truck was already there, lights off. Windshield streaked with rain. I swore under my breath and ran inside. The wind punched through the barn like a fist. One of the big doors was straining against its track. Up near the peak, a ladder leaned against the wall. Carmen was halfway up, wrestling a blue tarp that snapped and cracked like it wanted to throw her. It was not brave. It was insane. "Carmen!" I yelled. The wind took my voice and tore it sideways. She reached for her hammer. Her boot slipped on the rung. For one frozen second she hung there, fingers scraping for a hold. My body moved before my mind did. I crossed the floor at a dead run and hit the ladder. I went up 2 rungs at a time, grabbed her around the waist and locked my arm across her hips like a belt. "Get down," I said in her ear, voice tight and calm. "I have to cover it," she gasped. "The water is coming in. If it soaks the insulation, it will fail. The inspector will." "Too dangerous," I said. Another gust slammed against the wall. The ladder shook. I took most of her weight against my chest and backed us down, 1 rung at a time. When we hit the floor, the ladder shifted. I turned so my back took the hit. Pain shot up my spine, but I kept my grip on her, We scrambled to the inner corner of the barn, away from the open door and the worst of the draft. Wind roared around us. The wood above our heads groaned deep, testing every joint. Carmen's hands shook. She stared at the roof like she could hold it up with fear. "All that work," she said, her voice cracking for the first time since I met her. "If it tears off, if it fails, it is over. I cannot do this again, Jude. I cannot start from nothing again." I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her in, not to trap, to anchor. She pressed her face into my chest. She was shaking hard enough that her teeth clicked. I looked up at the ridge, at the new beam, at the joints I had cut with my own hands. The barn bent under the storm, but it did not break. The beam did not scream. It flexed and held. "No," I said. "It is not going to fail." "How do you know?" she whispered. "Because I built it," I said. I dropped my gaze back to hers. "And I built it for you." Her body went very still in my arms, not afraid, focused. "Jude," she said softly, "do not say that unless you mean it." Quote. My jaw clenched. My heart pounded. The storm pushed at the walls. I could have dodged. I could have laughed it off. I did not. "I do not waste words," I said. Her fingers curled into the front of my shirt. That was her answer. Clear. Simple. I lifted one hand and brushed a wet strand of hair away from her face. My thumb grazed her cheek. She leaned into it like she had been waiting her whole life to rest her weight on someone else's strength. "I am not waiting anymore," I murmured. She nodded once. Then she kissed me. It was not soft or shy. It was a sharp, sure move from a woman who had been fighting alone for too long. Her hands fisted in my shirt, hauling me closer. My hands framed her jaw, steady and careful, holding her like something I refused to drop. The storm howled outside. The barn shook once and then settled deeper onto its foundation. The wood held. The roof held. We held. When we finally broke for air, we did not rush into anything else. We stayed close, foreheads touching, breathing hard, hearing the wind fade in small steps. I grabbed a big canvas drop cloth and wrapped it around her shoulders like a blanket. She slid closer, her body fitting along mine as if the space had been cut for this. We sat there on the floor, backs against a post I had sistered, two stubborn people in a building we had dragged back from the edge, letting the night rage around us. No drama, no speeches, no regret, just warmth, just the slow, steady feeling that something had shifted into place and was not going to slip out again. Morning hit hard and bright. The storm was gone. The sky was clear and sharp blue, like it had never thrown a tantrum in its life. The air outside the barn smelled like wet earth and cut grass. Branches were down along the drive. A trash can had rolled into the ditch. One gutter on the old house had twisted. The barn was still standing. The roof was still on. Carmen and I stepped out into the yard together. My back ached from where the ladder had hit. My shirt was still damp. Her hair was a mess under her cap. She looked tired and alive. We both tilted our heads back at the same time, checking the ridge, the flashing, the cupola. Everything held. The beam sat clean and straight, exactly where we had set it. No tears in the metal, no missing panels. Carmen let out a long breath. It sounded like a weight leaving her lungs. "You did good," I said, automatic. She looked at me sideways. "You mean we did good," she said. I did not argue. She was right. I bent down and picked up her cap from the floor inside the doorway where it had fallen in the chaos. I dusted it off and settled it back on her head, pulling the brim low over her eyes. It was a small thing. It felt bigger than it should have. "Thanks," she said quietly. "Stay dry," I said. We did not talk about the way we had fallen asleep sitting up against that post, wrapped in a drop cloth, with her tucked against my side and my hand resting on her hip. We did not talk about the kiss or the second one that had come later, slow and tired in the dark. We had a bigger thing in front of us, final inspection. Warren rolled up right at 8 in his white sedan. as if the storm had been scheduled around his calendar. He stepped out, looked at the barn, and hid his disappointment badly. He had been hoping to find a pile of rubble. He walked inside, clipboard in hand. I could feel Carmen tense beside me. I reached down and brushed my knuckles against her hand. She threaded her fingers through mine like it was natural and did not let go. Warren started at one corner and worked his way through. He checked outlet heights, railing spacing, stair rise and run. He squinted up at the trusses. He tapped the posts with the back of his pen. He paused under the ridge beam and frowned. "This is new," he said. "Reclaimed," I answered. "Tied into the original joinery. Load path is the same. Stronger now." He did not argue. He could see the work. Craft is its own language. He checked the door headers, the emergency lighting, the exit signs. He looked for some easy fault he could hang a stop order on. There was nothing. Finally, he stopped in the center of the barn and looked around slowly. The big oak frame rose around him, solid and still. Light slanted down through the clerestory windows, catching dust in the air. "Pass," he said, short and sharp. He scribbled on the permit card and slapped a green sticker on the post by the door. "Occupancy granted." He turned to leave, already annoyed that he had to give ground. "Warren," Carmen said. He stopped and faced her. Carmen stepped closer to me, our hands still linked. She lifted our joined hands slightly, like she was introducing something official. "This is Jude," she said. "My partner on this build. Any questions about the structure go through him or through me, not around us." Warren's eyes dropped to our hands. His mouth twitched. He looked like he wanted to make a comment and thought better of it. Maybe because of the override letter in his file. Maybe because the barn around him felt too solid to insult. He grunted something that might have been goodbye and walked out into the sun. The second his car cleared the drive, Carmen turned to the sticker and let out a shout that shook the rafters. "We did it!" she yelled. She threw her arms around my neck. She did not hesitate. Her feet almost left the ground with the force of it. "We did it," she said again, laughter breaking through her words. "You did it," I said. My face hurt. It took me a second to realize I was smiling so hard my muscles were confused. She pulled back, but she did not let go of me. Her hands slid down to my shoulders. We were close enough that I could see a line of sawdust still on her cheek. "The bank gets paid," she said. "The venue opens in spring. I can keep the land. I can keep this place." She spun away and looked at the barn with new eyes, future eyes. "I am going to need help with the build-out," she said. "Tables, benches, railings, the bridal suite, the bar, all of it. I need a partner who knows wood and hates shortcuts, someone grumpy." "I am expensive," I warned. "I know," she said softly, "but you are worth it." Something in my chest shifted and finally settled. I looked around the barn, at the posts I had straightened, the joints I had cut, the beam I had pushed into place with my own shoulder. This was not just a job anymore. It was part of my work, part of my time, part of my life. "I am not signing a contract," I said. Confusion flickered across her face for half a second until I reached into my pocket and pulled out my keys. I slid the spare key to my shop off the ring and held it out to her, flat in my palm. "Collateral," I said. "So you know I am coming back tomorrow." Her fingers brushed my skin as she took it, her eyes locked on mine. "Does this mean you are done waiting?" she asked. My throat tightened. I stepped in closer, one hand finding her waist, the same spot I had grabbed on the ladder when the wind tried to take her. "Yeah," I said. My voice came out low and sure. She was worth the wait. She smiled, slow and bright, like sunrise coming through a clean window. Then she tugged my shirt and pulled me down into a kiss that tasted like rain, sawdust, and a future that did not scare me. When we broke apart, the terrier barked once, as if to remind us he existed. Carmen laughed and wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "We should get to work," she said. "We never stopped," I answered. Over the next hour, we walked through the space like clients, measuring where the dance floor would go, where the band would set up, where families would gather and cry and celebrate. Carmen talked about string lights, wildflowers, and couples who wanted real wood under their feet instead of plastic. I listened, nodded, made notes in my head about hidden blocking and bracing she did not know she needed yet. Resilience is not a speech. It is a sound. A hammer strike that lands true. A chain clicking one link at a time. A beam settling into place with a deep, satisfying thunk. It is a woman who refuses to sell her father's land. It is a man who shows up in the storm instead of watching the weather from his couch. Some places do not need fancy words. They need straight lines, honest joints, strong foundations. People who notice the warning groan in the wood and do not look away. If you are still here at the end of this story, maybe you have something in your life that needs rebuilding the right way, something you want to make solid again. I hope you find the person who will stand in the storm with you, shoulder under the beam, hands steady, saying with their actions what their mouth only has to say once. I am still waiting for her, I had told Carmen. Now, when I step into that barn and hear nothing but quiet wood and distant wind, I know the truth. I am not waiting anymore.